know that a professional home appraisal is super important when you're buying a new home and even when you're refinancing your existing home. An unbiased opinion as to your home's value just gives you huge amounts of information and is also required often by your lender to help assess what is the true value. But there's a lot of questions around that, such as what goes into getting a home appraisal? How do I get my home ready for that appraisal? So today I have Chris Skalet here with Advanced Appraisal Services, and we're going to talk about all things appraisal and hopefully answer all your questions for you. Chris, thank you so much for coming and doing this.
I'm excited. This is fun.
Yeah, this is fun.
I'm excited.
So let's start with the basics. What is a home appraisal and why is it important?
Well, an appraisal is basically just an opinion of value. It's my opinion of value. Real estate appraisal, in particular, has to consider three approaches to value. One's the sales comparison approach, which is everybody knows as comps, so they talk about that. One's the income approach, if it's a rental or if it's a commercial building. And the other is the cost to build. If it's a newer house, that's kind of applicable. But that's so it's basically my opinion of the real estate's value.
Okay. So a lot of people ask me, well, do I have to have an appraisal? What's your answer for that?
It depends. You're going to hear this all day long. You're going to hear it depends all day long. It depends on what, I guess, you're trying to accomplish. So if you're trying to borrow, several hundreds of thousands of dollars and you don't have that as cash, then yeah, you may need an appraisal to let the bank know that the collateral is okay to lend that much money on. So that may be the case. You may have all that money in cash too. So you may want to say, hey, I want to make sure I'm making a good investment too. So you may actually order an appraisal there. But there's a lot of, I do estate work, we do divorce work, we do trust work, we do all kinds of different things with the appraisals. So it just depends.
Okay.
I'll say that about 10 more times today.
It's all good.
I'm sure.
I've done a couple interviews recently with lenders and we talk about interest rates and it depends.
Yeah, I know. It really does. It depends. Yeah.
There's nothing in our world that's like black and white.
Yeah.
And I kind of love that.
That is good.
So this is kind of an obvious one to you and me who work in this industry every day.
Right.
But I've had people ask me, what's the difference between an appraisal and a home inspection?
Oh, big difference. An appraisal or an appraiser, they're just observers, I think. So they observe conditions and quality, and they observe these things and how they relate to value. And then they prepare an actual report, or they could consult or do whatever. But they all do that all in regards to a certain value. Now, home inspector, that's why I never say I'm coming out to do an appraisal inspection, because they get them confused. The consumers might get it confused. Yeah. But an inspector is actually, digging around underneath your house and running dishwashers and opening windows and testing electrical. And you never want me to be that guy, ever. You don't. So we're just we observe conditions and how they relate to, and conditions and quality and how it relates to value. That's we're just great observers.
Okay. So when you're in the house, what are the things you're looking at or for?
Wow, there's a lot of things too. Typically when we get to a house, first thing we do is we like to take a look at, of course, you guys have to say location all the time. So we're looking at the actual physical location. We are identifying the property. We're making sure we got the right property and how it sits. Is it on a busy road? We're looking all around the exterior of the property. I measure it. Typically we'll measure it and make sure we have the right square footage. We go inside and note materials. And so basically I'm just gathering primary data out of the house, primary data about the house.
Okay. What improvements, in your opinion, add the most amount of value for a house?
Kitchens and baths are always there too. But we're starting to see trends. And here it goes again. It depends. It depends on the area too. But we're starting to see some definite trends for outdoor areas. There was a time where I was like, oh my gosh, I don't think we can justify, making adjustments within a grid for some of these outdoor areas or some of these pool areas or, these outdoor kitchens and things like that. But they were becoming really prevalent, and we were able to start extracting some of those things from the market. So it depends on what you can take out of the market. Typically your best bang for your buck. The National Association of Realtors always produces like that cost versus value report. Yeah. It's always kitchens and baths are typically it. There, and you can spend a lot of money on those things too.
Well, and I'm going to kind of sidebar here for a minute because I actually am working on an upcoming listing now and trying to look at comps. And there is a difference when you're looking at original cabinetry versus updated cabinetry on a 50-plus-year-old house.
Right.
Or granite or quartz versus Formica. And those are things that I'm not sure all of the, just mass public really understands, that when you go into that house, you assign kind of a different level of value.
Yeah, exactly.
Based on those level of finishes.
Exactly. And quality is relative, right? So, we've got, laminate, vinyl, luxury vinyl plank, which I think is sort of an oxymoron. And then you've got hardwood floors, or you've got quartz versus Formica. So those things are relative to each other. And then, condition, that's pretty much absolute. It's either good, average, fair, excellent, new, construction, whatever. Those things are there. But yeah, we do that. And we take all these things into account. Now, when we do an appraisal, we don't compare every single component of a house to each other, just because that would be impossible, and it'd take me like 2 years to run an actual appraisal report. But it would be an overall level of quality or overall level of condition. So that's why I like all your great pictures in MLS, because I can actually see what's in there.
Yeah,
they're not filtered up to horrible, and I can recognize it's the actual house I'm in.
And I can promise you, I always tell my photographer, make it look as good as it can.
Yeah, no kidding.
But don't make it look like something it's not.
Yeah, sometimes I'm like, am I in this? I'm like, I go back out and I check the mailbox. No, seriously, I'm like, am I at the same house? Because it's been filtered up like some 60-year-old mom on Instagram or something. So I'm trying to figure out, is this the right actual property?
Exactly. Am I where it's supposed to be?
Yeah, it's not. You want a fair representation of the house.
And for the love, if there's a giant power tower in the backyard, just show it.
Oh my gosh,
please.
I've got the craziest pictures on MLS that I'll share it with you.
Oh, please do.
I'll share it with you.
I'll get a good giggle out of it.
Yeah, you'd laugh about the power tower.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So what are things that people can do to their home that might hurt their value on an appraisal?
Oh my God, they can do all kinds of things. I'd maybe not go there. What I think hurts more than anything is having like a project that they've started that they haven't actually completed.
Okay.
So that's a big deal. I think that's a big deal for the lender too, because the lender would like it to be completed. So if you rip up all the carpet, or you've ripped out all the tile in your bathroom, or you've ripped out your ovens or whatever, you probably need to go ahead and either finish it or don't do it at all. That's my best advice for that. Yeah, there you go.
Thank you.
So do that. And then what else would hurt you? Any type of safety or sanitary issue. And some people, may live with that, and they may not know that that's not normal, that the septic tank is broken in their backyard. That's not just a little pond or lake or something back there. So sanitation and safety issues, I think, are the things that I think would really hurt you. Yes.
How long, excuse me, from your end, because I know about how much time you spend at the house, but then I know how much time you spend at home doing the homework and the research and all that. For you, how long does that appraisal typically take to complete, from the time you pick up the order till the time you submit the report to the lender?
So we pick up the order. Our office policy is to call those people within the first 2 to 3 hours of actually receiving the order and setting it up, put on the schedule. From the time we look at it, drive time to get there, we look at the property. It could take anywhere from 30 minutes for a teeny tiny little house upwards to 1.5 hours to really get everything we need. Possibly go shoot my comparable sales, get back to the office, actually start writing it up. That's another maybe hour or so there. Our total, from the time we're at the house till the time we get the report back, is usually, you're talking about 28 pages of documentation, maybe 30. So you're talking about probably two business days is our office's policy. Okay. But you may run into something where you're just struggling like crazy. I may be reaching out to you saying, hey, Shelby, help me out. So it could take a little bit longer there too. And we also interview agents, and we interview agents for comparables too. So, so all in, probably business days. Right now we're a little bit slow, so about 5 business days all in. Okay.
Well, that's usually if I have a client asking me, well, how long does that take? And I'm like, guys, you need to allow at least a week.
Yeah.
Bare minimum. Yeah. Sometimes 2, depending on how busy, what season we're in.
Where it is.
Yeah. Is it super unique, or is it a Knox box?
Sure.
You know, because I know if what those unique ones, oh boy,
Yeah,
I have a
those
hard
are-
time comping them to list them. I can only imagine what you have
Yeah.
to actually
I've got
assess
solutions.
them out.
Is that going to be a question later? Because I don't want to answer it right now, but we can talk.
Go for it.
Okay. Well, no, unique is always, I always think it's unique is a little bit easier than to appraise a unique property rather than, just the Knox-Box.
Okay, then like me.
The sales are limited. There's only so much. So I always say, you guys say it 3 times. It's like location, location, location. We've already said it once. But I mean, it's just like if you're trying to find comparables, you stay in the same location. If you've got a crazy log cabin, let's say like in Hardin Valley, you're not going to drive to Townsend for a comparable sale. You're going to try to find something in that location because that's where someone's looking.
Yes.
So I always say stay close and then try to find things that are similar, like utility. And when I say utility, like 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, size, is it on acreage? Is it on the river? Is it on the lake? Does it have a mountain view? Those kind of things. But close always trumps everything. If it's close, that's your location is the key.
Okay.
So that's what I do on unique.
What do you do? Just again, I'm kind of popping off to then circle back. But do you look at the age of the home? Like if the one you're comping is in 1985, are you going to look at a 2020 build?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. It depends. I'll say it again, but it depends if I can find relatively same aged properties, I'd like to show marketability for those aged properties. But if I can't find that kind of stuff, if I can't find that there, I'll find something. Let's say mine's a newer house and now I've got an older house that's been remodeled. Then maybe I talk about more in terms of like what I call an effective age, meaning that it's been improved. And so it'll last a lot longer because the maintenance is great and they've remodeled and updated and renovated. So maybe I could get away with comparing it to houses that are newer. Now, if there's nothing but older houses, we may have something in the market where we may be a little bit newer than the predominant price. And then I'll just have to figure out what my adjustment would be versus that.
I'm still like, you figure out those adjustments and not me.
I don't want you to figure out those adjustments.
Yeah, I don't want to. That's your lane.
Yeah.
I'm happy to stay out of it.
Yeah, I'll stay in it.
So what could a homeowner do to prepare to make sure their house is as ready as it can be for you?
I'd say clean it up. I would say, I mean, we're all human, but I mean, just the whole experience would be great. I mean, if you've got an animal that's trying to kill me, that's usually doesn't go over really well. But we're all human. Yeah, but we're all human. I mean, just clean up your house as somewhat, because I mean, I actually take off my shoes when I walk in your house, and I'm like, I take great care. Now, if I have to burn my socks afterwards, or if I feel like I've got like,
go home and need a shower.
Well, I've had houses where I've gone and I've come out and I've had like light colored pants on. I've had fleas all over me. It's disgusting. So I'm like, so I've had it all. I'd say. But by the way, I'm not appraising your housekeeping, but it's always nice to put your best. We're all human. We're all there. And then another thing I would do is I would have like a list of all the improvements and all the updates or remodeling, and I'd have that list available. I'd probably put dates that I'd perform those things. Now, some people are like, "Hey, I have a new roof." Like, when did you do that? And I'm like, yeah, 2011. I was like, that, I'm an old guy, so that doesn't seem like that long ago.
I'm with you.
But
And then
it's
you
like,
go,
wait, that's 13. Is that 13?
13 years ago.
13 years ago? So, yeah, it's a long time ago. So, I have that a lot. And have a list of improvements, I think, is good. And then if you have any information about, like, let's say somebody, like sold a house, or there was like some type of estate or divorce or some kind of funky sale, or any kind of data about your neighborhood, I mean, I'll take whatever you got. So that kind of stuff actually helps, I think, when I'm actually in a house with that's not a vacant house here.
Yeah. And guys, when you're thinking about listing your house, please work with an agent who's going to ask you to make them that list of all the improvements you've done. Like when I'm asking my sellers to do it, I love if you give me everything you've done, what you paid to have it done, and when it was done. That doesn't mean all of that information is going to go public, but it does mean I have it, and then I can work with it, and I can have that sheet in the listing ready for the appraiser of here's everything they've done and the dates they've done it. I'm probably not going to put what you spent. It just helps me when I'm pricing the house. But I'm going to feed that information to the appraiser because I want that appraiser to come in your front door and have the easiest, most pleasant experience in your house. This is the person that assesses the value for you. we want to make your life good.
I mean, we're all human. I mean,
Yeah.
we do. You just want to have a better,
You want to have a better
experience when you're out there. You don't want somebody that's really hateful or horrible or dirty or having their dog try to kill you. So
Yeah, I've
you
had
kind of want
Cujo.
that. Yeah.
I've walked into showings with Cujo.
Yeah.
And like you're looking at, oh, okay, well, LVT, okay, it's a newer-ish product, so
Right.
you know it's not going to be super old. But there are some things you're looking at them and going, okay, how long has this been here?
Right.
Did you put it in or did a previous owner put it in? And so
That's great.
it helps if we feed you. Here's what we know.
It's nice to know that too.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think as the listing agent, people are going to ask you those questions, so might as well have all that on the front
Oh,
end.
I want that. I will personally check to see how old your HVAC is, how old your water heater is, and I'm
Yeah,
going
you
to
know
ask
that's
you how
gonna
old your
fire.
roof is because
Yep.
I know I'm going to get asked.
Yeah, you are.
And so, and agents out there watching, if you don't know how to do that, get a hold of me. We'll figure that out. So, in general, kind of what's the ballpark price range for appraisals these days?
We do these things, what we call like a restricted use appraisal, where it's basically you just want to know one thing: what's this going to sell for?
Yeah.
So you're like, hey, I just had it measured, whatever else, or you can use the tax card as your measurement. So we don't have a lot of, and those start like right around 300, 350 there, and they can go on up to. I just built $1,200 for a huge, gigantic custom house. I probably could have spent the night, packed a lunch, and stayed there all day. I mean, it's a big house. It took me a lot of time to actually just gather data at the house.
So, let's talk a little bit about what happens when you go out, like, let's just say for even numbers, because I was not a math major. You have a contract that comes in, the house is selling for $500.
Okay.
You go out and you look at it, and in an appraisal, you're seeing $490. Do you have any kind of anything on your end that you have to do when that value does not meet the contract?
I don't. Well, the only time that I actually have something that I have to do is when I'm on the BA's panel. So if I decide that, or if my preliminary research indicates that I am below the contract price, then I have to invoke the Tidewater initiative. You heard of that? I did too. And I think everything should work that way. But anyway, it's named after a city, I think. And so what it is I will contact the point of contact on the VA order, and I'll let them know that my indications are below. And you get 48 hours to submit to me information. Now, whenever we're out looking anyhow, what's funny is I'll update my client, let them know, hey, I'm asking the agent for help here. Because there may be this sale that possibly sold I know we didn't want to say it earlier, but it may have sold on Zillow, or it may have been a FSBO or something.
Yeah.
There may have been this great sale. I just have to prove that if it's a test for a fair market transaction. So if there's one like across the street and it sold for $510, I need that sale, right?
Yeah.
I've used Instagram posts. I've used
Facebook
Facebook posts. Yeah, I need to show that there was exposure to the market, and that's one of the tests. So I like to do that, because if I just see a courthouse record in it, a courthouse or a tax record, I can't prove that that's
Right.
that fit all the tests. But so I will reach out even on conventional or anything else. So if you get that phone call or you get that email from me, I'm usually asking you for a couple of things. I'm asking you for, hey, where'd you come up with the square footage? Because you're about 400 square feet off. Or, hey, can I have that list of improvements that you got? And send me over whatever you got in your work file to price your house, because I'm actually giving you sort of a heads up. It's like my indications aren't there. What did you look at?
Yeah.
So I want to see that.
Well, and that's one of the things I love. Like, if I'm working with you, I know if you're calling me, you're trying. Like, we're trying to work together to get where the buyers want it to be, if it's worth it.
Yeah.
If you feel like that's a reasonable number.
Yeah.
And, agents or VA clients out there, or non-VA clients even, you had mentioned Tidewater. I personally love Tidewater. I know so many agents that they need to go have defibrillators because they're having massive heart attacks over a Tidewater. And I'm like, are you kidding? That gives me 48 hours.
Yeah, that's your opportunity.
That's my opportunity. I would much rather have that and at least have a shot at it than to have something come back and have it fall short.
Right.
And then we're having to appeal, and that's just a whole different ball of wax. And why would we not want that?
I agree.
It gives you the opportunity to ask us, okay, what were you seeing that made you price it that way? It gives us a chance to say, hey, here's what we were seeing. Is this helpful for you?
Right.
What's the problem in that?
I love it. I love it. And it's not like we're colluding or anything. You're providing data. I'm providing data. What's funny is you provide all the data that I use every day. It's called MLS.
It's called the MLS.
So so you're there on that. But I mean, this is really nice that you provide all that data so we can talk about that and I can see what kind of data you have and what kind of data I have. So it's really good. And I also think too, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So if you're doing all this homework ahead of time, go ahead and share it. When someone calls you up to, let's say I got to do one of your appraisals on this 500 house, and you say, hey, I've got a great list of improvements. I'm going to send you I'm going to send you some data and help you. So the more data I have on the front end, the easier it is on the back end.
Just a question for my own edification as I move forward. Like I've always put those in my listings because you guys have full access to everything that's in our MLS.
Under the documents tab, it's perfect.
Okay, because I've always if I have it, it's there. Because it helps showing agents while they're showing and getting the house under contract. Print it out and share it with your clients, please. That's why it's there. And then I want the appraiser to be able to look at it. And that's one less phone call you might have to make or one less thing you have to go digging up. It's like, folks, make everybody's life easy. It takes me 3 seconds.
Right, especially your list with all the improvements, like when they did the roof or the HVAC or any of that stuff. If they replaced any of that stuff and it's online already, you're going to save yourself just a lot of hassle. Exactly. And then, honestly, we're all human. The lazier you make me, the better experience. If I can copy and paste all your improvements, I'm going to make sure that when I go out and look at it, that they're all done, right?
Sure.
But if I can copy and paste your stuff and put it into my report and say, hey, per the agent, these are all the improvements.
This is here.
And I verified that I observed all these things when I was at the property.
Yeah.
That's great. And especially with the square footage too. A lot of times too, if you have a sketch or if it's a tricky one or you've got some kind of confirmation for your square footage, that's nice to know ahead of time too. So that could be posted on there under documents tab as well.
Well, and I'm going to do a shameless plug for measurements.
Order measurements.
Order measurements because .com because guys, I have numerous times I've gone to ordermeasurements.com if I've got a funky house or one that I pull a tax record from Knox County Property Assessor and then I'm looking at CRS and I've got a big discrepancy. I don't want to measure that house.
Right.
I go to the website and I choose, and shameless plug, I choose Chris. And you'll go out and you measure it for a fee. And as the agent, I just cover that.
Right.
It's part of my listing service. I take care of it. And then I have a sketch and I have the measurements. And so here, this goes in my listing.
Yeah, be careful. I think always be careful with your square footage and check. Agents can check old MLSs and if the square footage, like you'll see, it'll be 1,100, 1,400, and then it'll be back to 12, then it shoots up to 16, then it's back to 1,000. So you really, you see something like that, go ahead and splurge. It's just as important as your photos, I think, in that case.
Yes.
I'd
much rather
a good splurge.
Have you go do it, and then I know for sure an appraiser has measured this. Here's my sketch. It shows up, and it's a beautiful PDF. I literally just click and upload.
Yeah, it's
Makes
perfect
so
for the
easier.
docs tab.
So,
and we use a standard. It's called ANSI. It's American National Standards Institute.
Okay.
Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac require us to measure houses a certain way.
Yeah.
So that's the standard we use. So it's the same thing that we would do for an actual appraisal. So it's like, oh, shocker. And there's no surprises here. This thing's like, it's not 500 square feet smaller than I thought it was.
The listing says it's 1682, and I show up and it's 1682.
Exactly.
So I had asked if there's anything on your end if it comes in lower. Do you have anything if it comes in higher? Or just good for you, Mr.
Nobody cares. No, I don't think anyone cares. Now, we typically don't have to do a lot of justification on our end from an underwriter or anybody else's if it comes in higher. Although there's sometimes it's like, hey, was this price at this range? Or why are you appraising it for this when it was selling for this? And typically most of the time, I'll say that's like sort of maybe a non-arm's length transaction between related parties. It could be a tenant landlord, or it could be a father, a daughter, or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's what I typically have to go a little bit further in my explanation on why I'm praising you over. But on everybody else's case, they're just like,
yes.
We're all good, right?
So I know everybody freaks out over conventional appraisals versus FHA and VA appraisals, and oh my gosh, what kind of repairs might I have to do? Let's talk a little bit about what are those kind of repair items that if you see them, you have to note them on the appraisal.
Right. Well, first of all, don't ever freak out because the VA is probably the VA loans are some of the best programs out there, and you're really doing a disservice to our veterans by not taking care of them and allowing that process to happen, because it's not even as stringent as some people might think, And I think there's a lot of myths and a lot of misinformation out there about the requirements. But I mean, it's easy to check that stuff. So what are some of the things like conventional? Pretty much you get away with it. Conventional mortgages will pretty much, you can, as far as repairs go, you're pretty good. The only thing, like we talked about earlier, safety, sanitation, and then something that would really affect the marketability that would be there. So those are conventional. FHA and VA are somewhat similar as far as the minimum property requirements go. The number one, I guess, deficiency is I'll let you guess. Number one deficiency on FHA.
I'm trying to think back over, okay, what have I seen pop up? Peeling paint. Always pops up.
No, that's number one. That's number
Really?
one. Yeah.
Okay.
Anything that was built in 1978 or before.
Yep, lead-based paint.
As lead-based paint. And y'all had all those disclosures, but I mean, we'll go out for a FHA and there will be it'll be a big, gigantic house of flaking paint everywhere. And that has to be scraped, paint chips removed, repainted to match. And it's everything on the property, too. It could be the detached garage, it could be the storage building, cross-face door, foundation, whatever.
Oh, I have scraped and repainted and shot backed paint out of the yard.
Yeah. So that's usually the biggest there. And then the other ones just they relate back to like mostly just safety issues. But the lead-based paint is usually our number one.
I didn't realize that was number one. Actually, that's the one. Okay, when I think back, what just popped up?
In 1978.
Yep, the peeling paint.
That's the number one.
I was a new agent, had a small house in Roane County, and the night before, I am out there with the potential buyer. It was a for sale buyer, like you name it, it happened.
Right.
And we are scraping, touch-up painting, and shop vacuuming paint chips out of the yard. Oh, yeah. And the appraiser had at least said to me, if you can send me photographs, then I can bless it.
Yeah.
But I can't bless it without either seeing it or seeing photographic evidence of what has been corrected.
Yeah.
So I just shot video of like everything afterwards. I'm like, here, is there anything else you need?
And it may not be the end all be all. There may be an FHA underwriter that waives that requirement. I don't know if they do that or not, but they always have a chance to do that as well. And then anything else like FHA, you can just Google search. What are the FHA minimum property requirements? And then just Control F and search for attic or search for paint or search for septic. And it's all there. And honestly, you can have like cracked windows on FHA now. You can have worn out carpeting. There's things that, you don't have to have splash blocks and diversion away from the gutters unless you see like there's some type of obvious, deferred maintenance that's going on there. But you don't have to have that now. So there's a lot of things out there that you don't have to require people to do. Just Google search that and question it if you see it on. Like if you see it, you're like, wait a second, I don't know if that's a minimum property requirement. I'm going to fact check this.
Exactly. I want to check this. Because usually the only things I've seen other than the peeling paint have been what I call safeties or structurals. Like, okay,
no
someone's going to get hurt.
No handrail on something. You like
elevated decks where that rail's real soft and they're not so sure it's going to hold somebody. Yeah, that kind of.
I always had the Hank rule. When my kid was little, he'd try to fling himself down the steps, or something like that. So Hank was always trying to just kill himself. But I'm like, if it's over a certain, and honestly, if you're not sure, you can always defer back to a building code, I think, and that could be your ultimate. It's like, hey, you know what? It's 40 inches high.
Yeah.
My kid would break his neck there. That's probably a safety issue.
Probably, yeah. And then, you know what, guys, for the agents who are watching, like, have a conversation with the agent on the other side of the deal and work through it.
Yeah.
Like, I had one where I was the buyer's agent. We had an elevated deck above a garage that kind of stuck out the front. And we had a few rotten boards and we had a rotten railing.
Right.
Okay. I knew it when we showed the house. My clients were prepared for it. Sure enough, it was a VA appraisal. Which I'm a military mama. I'm all about them.
Good.
But we just talked to the seller. We're like, look, here's the deal. We just have to get it safe. We don't care if you stained it. We don't care if it's pretty. We just need it safe.
Right.
Just replace the boards that are the issue in that one section of handrail.
Yeah.
That's all we needed.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be beautiful and painted and all the things. So he was happy to do that. We were able to close. Yeah. My clients ended up redoing the deck anyway.
Right. And nobody's, today's day and age with the litigious as everyone is, you need to do that. So.
Yeah.
And plus, you don't want anybody to get
and
his properties.
Guys,
either. It's not good either.
Be a good human.
Yeah.
That's
exactly.
Like my mantra for everything. Just be a good human.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to get it on a t-shirt. So what are some typical questions that when you're doing an appraisal on something you might ask the listing agent so they know what to have prepared for you?
Obviously, improvements. How did you verify your square footage? The agent, right? The agent. What improvements have been made to the property? Notice maybe potentially is on the market a little bit longer than the average days on the market. Is there anything that you can tell me about that? Or, hey, I noticed this is selling for about, $50,000 less than your actual list price. Can you give me any information about that? Did I say verifies your square? How did you verify your square footage? I said that to you. And then anything else you would like to tell me about anything? Of course, is it vacant? Is it occupied? Is it on a lockbox? Is the power on? Can I observe all the utilities? Interesting fact, you don't have to have the power on for VA appraisals, which I'll find really odd.
I do too.
Because everybody thinks it's really restrictive, but it's not a requirement for them.
Oh, that's wild.
I know. Everybody else, FHA and conventional, you do.
I would have just assumed you should for everybody. So,
yeah. So anyway, I find it a little odd, but you don't have to.
Huh.
Anyway, those are the kind of questions I'm going to ask agents.
Let me ask you a question about that. What if, because we've been seeing them for years, and then they kind of slowed down a little, and I'm seeing them start to uptake again, the multiple offer situations.
Okay.
So let's say you see a house on the market, and it's listed at $500,000, but the contract on that house that you're appraising for is $540,000.
Right.
Is it at all helpful for you as an appraiser if that list agent says, hey, I had 6 offers that ranged from here to here?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's helpful. Now, there's some things where I'll double check and be like,
sure.
Well, why did you have multiple offers after it was on the market for 60 days? There's
right,
that's some weirdness,
But I'm still seeing
but I'm going to fact.
lists.
I'm going to fact. Yeah. So, if it's been on the market, a couple other things that you can do just to make yourself feel comfortable with that is I've had multiple offers on this. I'm going to tell you between the price range of $500,000 and $550,000 in this market for 4-bedroom, 3-bath houses in this particular subdivision or neighborhood, there's no active listings. So you have no supply, lots of demand. The prices typically tend to go for higher. Whether we can appraise it or not, that's another story. Right. But hopefully you'll know, hey, if I've got a bunch of offers over list price, I'm going to just say, hey, let's put an appraisal contingency in there because you'll have to cover the gap if it doesn't work.
Yeah, and it's interesting.
And that was like crazy all during COVID.
It was insane.
It was like, hey, this is crazy. There's an appraisal contingency in every one, and now I'm seeing them now, and I'm like, wait, hold on. We need to go back to that time where there's some contingency in the contract.
Well, and it's interesting because I have a current listing that it's in a section in Oxville that I knew. I'm like, okay, as soon as we go live, it's all on.
Yeah, I know. You're like multiple offers.
Multiple offers.
Else.
Fortunately, we waited until my seller was out because I'm like, if you're not, you're going to have to be.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to be home that day.
Back to back showings.
8 a.m. to 8 p.m., 12 showings.
Yeah.
It's a ridiculous number of offers. And so I've always wondered, is that really helpful? Because, you're seeing the list, you're seeing the contract.
Yeah.
Now, granted, where this particular one is kind of a no-brainer, but I know there are some others that I've had a couple other multiple offers on the buy side lately that maybe weren't as obvious. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's probably what happened there. So I always wondered, does that really help or not?
Yeah, it does. And plus, you have all the tools in your toolbox as a realtor to go in and pull up market statistics. You can say, hey, in this market, it's typical for the average buyer to pay 2 or 3% more than it's a listed sales price ratio. So you're at 102, 103. Or if you're trying to convince me it's worth more and the listed sales price ratio is like a 97%, then I know that the market is expecting a 3% reduction there. But you have all those tools in your toolbox. You can show supply and demand. It's simple with all the data that you put in MLS.
Well, and I know one of my questions we've already talked about, like, what would be the biggest factor, and it sounds like location.
Yeah, number one.
Yeah.
Number one, location. You don't say it 3 times. It's a big deal.
There you go.
Which I find very odd because everybody says that, but then, when you're providing comparable sales, guess what? Provide stuff in the same location.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really huge.
I was actually, I mentor new agents at my brokerage, and I was having a session with an agent this morning, and she's still learning how to comp.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, if you're comping in halls, you don't look at houses in Farragut.
Right. Or Powell even.
Yeah,
Same
no.
house. Why would you leave?
Yeah, I'm like, if it's in a neighborhood, try the neighborhood first.
Exactly. Subdivision.
Yeah, don't go outside of that
Same
unless
street.
you have to. Yeah. I'm like, the farther you go, the more people get.
Exactly.
So ratchet it this way and get a little creative with some of your others if you have to.
Right.
So it's teaching folks, I'm like, location, location, location.
And most people, I know you know this, but most people, when they're looking for a house, they're looking for a specific location. Now, you may have that nut bag that's like, wants to look, like Gatlinburg to Oak Ridge to, Quarryton to Farragut. You may have that person, but typically people are concentrated in their location. They know what they want in that area.
It's for work or for school, typically, or family.
Yeah.
They need to be in a certain geographic area.
Right.
So do you guys ever get the question, if a buyer client of yours that you've just done that appraisal for, and let's say the appraisal falls in short, do they ever call and say, well, do you think I should still buy it? What do you think?
I don't really get that phone call.
Okay.
If we do, if we're doing work for that client, if let's say an individual hires me and we send them the appraisal and they're like, man, thank you. I'm not going to do that. So we'll have that interaction. But typically my client, I do a lot of non-lender work.
Okay.
So I do have that a lot. But if you're dealing with lender work, my client is the actual lender.
Yeah.
So they've got all the risk because they're loaning hundreds of thousands of dollars on that. So typically I'll get it from them, but it's usually somebody going, hey, why aren't you considering this sale or this sale or this sale?
Yeah.
But I do get it from our non-lender work. I'll get that a lot. I'm like, what do you think about this? And then we may even do some consulting work. I'm got a consulting project tomorrow, and somebody's like, hey, should I add this square footage to this property that I'm fixing up? Should I do this? Is that smart? Will I have a good return? So there's some times where they're like, hey, maybe I shouldn't do that because you just said I probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
So we have that every once in a while with the non-lenders.
Okay. So how do seller concessions in a contract affect the appraisal for you? Sellers paying $5,000 towards closing.
I can give you a Fannie Mae response on that, or I can just tell you, within the report, you're supposed to be able to properly assess whether or not the concessions affect the sales price.
Okay.
And then you're supposed to make an adjustment within our sales comparison grid based on those concessions. Well, sometimes it's hard to prove what the concessions are because we don't list them on our MLS. Other MLSs will list how much the concessions are.
Yeah.
Of course, there's other things too that we got to consider when we review contracts. Is there personal property included? We exclude that. But anyway, back to concessions. It's not typically, it may or may not be a dollar for dollar adjustment for that.
Okay.
Right? Mm-hmm. So I have to be able to extract what the market's reacting to that. So that's the long of that, or that's actually the short of that, because it's a lot more to it than I think.
Different
but
funkies there.
Our MLS doesn't allow for us to have ready access, and so I may be calling you and say, Shelby, you closed this property about 8 months ago, and you're like, well, I
slept 5 hours.
I was like, I had a good night's sleep last night. I can't tell you where I was yesterday. But no, I may ask you about concessions for that and try to interview the agents on the concessions. Typically, if I see that something is sold for well above a price, or well below it too, there may be something in there that I don't know about.
Well, that's typically the call I get. If I get any calls from appraisers, it's typically asking me about one of my listings that's already closed.
Right.
Did we have seller concessions?
Right.
And I get it, because you're trying to assess that.
Other MLSs in the state, I actually put it on their MLS briefs.
Yeah.
Which will be helpful.
Helpful.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's a sort of maybe a privacy or transparency thing that our board does. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
To me, the sales price becomes public record at that point.
Right.
So I don't see why that couldn't be included. Got it. So we've already kind of talked about it. Hindsight, I should have put this question up further up in listing. Do you get to see the full contract?
Yes.
Thank you.
Typically, well, when I do lender work, I do.
Yeah.
We're required to review and analyze the contract for sale because there could be lots of items in that contract that actually affect the actual real estate.
Yeah.
Now, I don't enforce contracts. I don't do that.
Yeah.
But I will analyze the contract and report that to the intended user, the lender.
Yeah.
Typically on that.
Well, that makes sense. And I've there for a while, I think, post 2008, and everybody having to reconfigure everything. You know, when I first came into the industry, a lot of people, the appraiser shouldn't get to see the contract. And I'm like, why not? They need to know what that house is under contract for.
Yeah.
And do we meet that or do we not?
Concessions, there could be personal property included in there. They could be thrown in. You could be a lakefront house. They're thrown in the boat and all the furniture. I mean, there could be things that affect the actual things that we need to disclose about the sales price and the agreed upon price that are in there. So we'll analyze that and say whether or not things are typical for the market, or, you know, if there's big gifts of equity, we probably need to explain that. And that might be in the contract, you know. So there could be some things that the intended user that's lending all the money wants to know about that. Now, am I going to enforce the contract? Am I going to make sure that's not my job? No. Right? So I won't do that, but we do report and analyze.
You need to know what's in it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I know the next question may be more in my wheelhouse, because I was going to ask, like, when do appraisals happen? But that may, as I'm thinking through that may be more of a realtor wheelhouse than an appraiser wheelhouse.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you know, just as far as like for the lending process, I mean, you know, as soon as they get, you know,
as soon as we clear home inspection,
home inspection, yeah. So you got a bound contract. You're bound. You got all your home inspection stuff, and they send it in. And a lot of times, too, they'll jump the gun and send it over. And they're like, wait a second. Whoa, hold up.
Oh, yeah.
The home inspection's not done. So that's actually, I mean, yeah. Why don't you answer that question, Shelby?
It's
the best time when it's done with it. When you're done with the home inspection, I would think that would be probably your optimal time to have it ordered.
Typically, most of the lenders I've worked with for years, and we know each other well, and they know I'm going to get that inspection done. I write my contracts for like 10 days. I try to get them done within 7.
Yeah.
Because I know we have till day 14 to get that appraisal ordered. I want that appraisal ordered like the day we clear the home inspection, let's go.
Yeah, you can show documentation that it's ordered.
Yeah, exactly. So we've met the goal. You guys, I'm giving you as much time as I possibly can.
Right.
Because especially during busy season, I know you guys get slammed.
Oh, yeah.
There aren't nearly enough of you guys to cover it all, and we're crazy.
Right.
And so it's like, but then I got to thinking, that's probably more on my end than your end.
And if you list, like, let's say you do new construction, a lot of new construction work.
Yeah.
If that house is ready for the final inspection, you know, like it's completed construction, I would suggest that you give everybody as much time as humanly possible and be really in touch with your subs and contractors and everybody else, just so, you know, so you're closing on time, but also you're just like, hey, you know what? There's a broken window. We're missing a bunch of stuff in this house. It's not ready for closing. I've got it scheduled for Friday. Can you go out Friday morning at 8:00? Yeah. So it's always good if you're listing the newer construction houses, kind of stay up on on what the status.
And that brings a good point too. For a lot of my folks, I try when I'm working with buyers, if they're wanting new construction, I try to warn them, you will have 2 visits from an appraiser, more likely than not.
Oh yeah.
You will have your first visit, which is kind of the full Monty of the appraisal.
Yeah.
But not everything's going to be done. I promise you landscaping won't be in.
Right.
There are certain things that just won't be done.
Right.
So they have to go back out.
Yeah.
And there will be an additional charge that goes with that. Yeah. So if you're buying new construction, the ballpark price ranges on appraisals, you're going to need to add a little bit to that, because you're going to have a second.
And somewhere from $75 to $150. So that's typically not much. And I don't know why you would balk at that price. You just go ahead and have the comfort of that appraisal already there, but have it gone through underwriting. All you need is just like a little
check.
Yeah, and you're done.
They did put the landscaping in, and they fixed that broken window. Yeah. Okay, great. We're good to go.
All the appliances are there. Hot water is hooked up. I saw the hot water.
Exactly. I know you can get a shower.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, wow. The gas finally got connected, and you have gas heat, and it's December.
Heat. Yes.
Good to know. Yeah. So how would you answer the question if someone said, well, my home inspection went well, so why do I need an appraisal?
Because it's 2 different things, like we talked about earlier. You want to make sure that the property could be in a great condition, but you could be paying $50,000 too much. And so the lender may want to know that. They may want to know that their collateral is really risky.
Yes.
And so, yeah, so two different things. I mean, one's condition and one's value.
Value, yeah. And as I always, when I'm doing a buyer consultation, I'm always telling my clients, guys, the word value, there's only one person that's allowed to use that word and assign it, and it's not me.
Yeah. You can say price range.
I'll tell you
pricing.
what I think the range should be.
Right.
And I don't even tell them, like, when they're offering, I don't even tell them exactly how much to offer. I'm like, this is where I would like to see it sell. Now, where within that range are you comfortable?
Right.
Are you comfortable, or are we outside your range? But, you know, it's always interesting because I always like, and you know me, I can border on a little bit of smart alecky.
Yeah.
So sarcasm is fluent in my house.
Yeah.
And so I look at them and kind of like you've been talking about. So you want someone to loan you hundreds of thousands of dollars, but you don't think they want some assessment that that value is really there.
Right.
I'm like, let's think about that for just a minute.
I know. Here's another thing too. You're like, well, a willing buyer is it's the contract's for $850,000. So a willing buyer is willing to say, and a seller is willing to do it, so it's worth $850, right? I'm like, well,
Maybe.
it's if you pay all cash, possibly, but maybe somebody's not willing to loan you the money for that $850.
Exactly.
So maybe that's a different story.
Exactly. And actually, that does kind of segue into my next question is, and I have cash buyers, and they've asked me this before, like, if I'm a cash buyer, do you think it's worth it to get an appraisal? And can I use that appraisal to then challenge a sales price if I'm trying to negotiate?
You can use it whatever way you want. So if you hire me, and let's say you hire me, and I want to know what I want to know what your opinion of value is as of this day, then yeah, I think it's smart, especially if you have a cash buyer. I mean, even those cash buyers, there's sometimes the appraisal contingency box is marked in your contract. It has to appraise for this much. So I think maybe to protect your liability and to protect that, I mean, of course, I'm always going to tell you to pay for an appraisal. God, that's not living, right? They're always important. You should always have it done, right? No, but I think it is. I mean, I think if you're trying to protect your client, it's important to do that.
Yeah. Well, and as you said that, I was thinking back to the whole, like, clients waiving home inspections during COVID, and that gave me such heartburn. That's
going to come back. Well, I'm sure it's already haunted some people.
It has.
And it haunted some people that were probably, cash buyers that were buying and then turn around and selling a little bit later because, the market stabilized and it didn't go up like they thought it was going to go up. So there could have been some.
Know about defects that you then turned around and tried to sell it, and someone else had the home inspection.
And they're not like latent defects. It's not like something that you can see. There was something that you could readily observe probably at the time, right? Yeah. And
so,
a little nuts there for a little while.
It did. So I put appraisals and home inspections in that, guys. These are your insurance policies.
Yeah.
These are what make sure you understand what you're buying and what you're paying for what you're buying. You understand what it is and what it's worth.
Sure. Yeah.
And those are the two people. I can't tell you those two things.
Right.
We need an inspector and we need an appraiser.
Man, you don't want that liability.
I can't.
I know you don't, but you don't want that anyway. So I mean, I get it. And plus, you're protecting your people.
Well, and that's my biggest thing. Is like, it goes back to the be a good human.
Yeah.
But folks, take care of your people.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're representing a buyer, take care of your buyer. Yeah. If you're representing the seller, do your homework. Help your seller out. So, do you have any kind of last minute thoughts, questions, anything we haven't talked about that you want to share?
Can it be sort of directed towards agents?
Absolutely. It can be anything you want.
The price per square foot method is not an appropriate pricing method for you. It's used it's used inappropriately. It's like, we'll compare a 1,000 square foot house price per square foot to a 4,000 square foot house. So as the square footage gets bigger, the price per square foot gets less. It's just an economy of scale. It's a basic economic principle. But we always want to say price per square foot as well. That's if you know the exact square footage, I guess, too. So if you're using a tax card and it's 400 square feet wrong, and you've got a contract for 200 and it's 400 square feet wrong, and you're like, oh, it's all day $100 a square foot. Guess what? Is it worth $40,000 less? Maybe not. Maybe not. Yeah. But you're boiling down every component of a house to one parameter. It's not a pricing method that's recognized by us as well.
Right.
Maybe in a super homogeneous market where everything's the same, you could do that. But do the range.
talk about ranges of sales, and we talk about that. I talk about that.
I was going to say, I'm getting your
we've done it
classes.
before,
You're
but
treating me well.
the range is the way to talk about that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, typical houses in this range sell from 475 to 525.
Yeah.
I feel great at 500. I talk about it in those terms. The price per square foot method is not a recognized pricing valuation method.
No. And it's interesting because I have clients that ask me all the time, and still some agents who are living in that world, but
Right.
I have a lot of clients who are like, but my neighbor's house sold for $200 a square foot. And I'm like, that's great.
Right.
Let's talk about size. Let's talk about features. Let's talk about quality. Let's talk about maintenance. Let's talk about, are we really comparing apples to apples?
Oh, they're on 10 acres. I'm only on 1 acre.
Yes.
I mean, it's like, how can you compare this stuff?
Oh, their house was built in 1965, and this lot sat vacant, and so my house didn't get built till 2000. They're
Right.
not updated, and
Yeah.
There's so many things.
I know. There's too many factors there.
Yeah.
Unless it's like completely homogeneous. Even then,
It's
people are adding
yeah.
upgrades, and they're not. There's no two houses that are on the same lot. So every lot is different. Period.
Yeah.
The Earth's different
exactly
on that lot. So
Yeah,
lose
I-
that. That's my lose that agents.
Yes. Thank you. I meant
You
to
already
ask
lost
you
it.
that.
You lost it a long time ago. You're very highly evolved.
Well, I try.
Yeah,
I've been to enough of your
There you
trainings
go.
where I'm like, guys, I go listen to as many of yours as I can
Yeah.
because I'm the one out in the field trying to price houses fairly for sellers and comp houses fairly for buyers. And if I don't know how, I always tell people, I try to see through their eyes as the buyer, and I try to approach it the way I've been trained to approach it from appraisers, is what is it that they're going to look at?
Right.
I need to be looking at those same things. I
Right.
can't assess the value, but I can tell you, okay, I'm seeing houses similar age, similar size, style, all the things in that area are selling between here and here.
Right.
So like
Yeah.
you said, 475 to 525 at 500, I am turning cartwheels.
Yeah,
I
that's
agree
great.
with that.
I'm riding that range,
Yeah.
and I feel really
I
comfortable,
feel
and really
great.
good about it. Yeah.
Or you know what? This house that you're looking at or that you're about to list, you've done all the upgrades. You've done all the things, and it checks every single box. And I
Right.
feel great at 525
Right.
because we can defend it.
Yeah, you're at the higher end of the range.
Yeah,
so the
believe
range
it.
is great.
Yeah.
Do the range.
Awesome. Thank you.
Like it.
Well, thank you for doing this with me today.
It's fun.
These are always fun. I
Yeah.
love these.
Okay.
So, guys, if you're looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate in the Knoxville market, I would love the opportunity to do a free consultation with you, see how I can help you out, and show you my signature process for helping people with their real estate needs in Knoxville. You can contact me by email at shelby@brookshomegroup.com.